NFL talk here. Of course, Combine is next week. Everyone is hot and buzzing about the draft, but of course, free agency is always on everyone's mind as well. We've got Jeremy Fowler with us. Jeremy, what are you watching and what are you hearing about George Pickens?
Peter, this could get messy because the Cowboys are expected to franchise tag George Pickens. They would rather keep him than trade him, I'm told. But Pickens is unafraid to play hardball here. I don't expect him to sign that franchise tag anytime soon. He and his representatives will probably sit back. Maybe he could miss some off-season workouts and play that whole song and dance. So Dallas has to decide, are they willing to pay him a market value on a long-term deal that could be above $30 million per year?
He would. Should the Cowboys franchise tag George Pickens?
Absolutely. Like, listen, George Pickens, you can make the case he was the best receiver on the Dallas Cowboys team last year. But I haven't forgotten everything that went on behind the scenes with the Pittsburgh Steelers. If I'm the Dallas Cowboys, I'm literally going to say, show me again. Go out there and show me again that what we saw last year is that's the expectation every year. And if he does that, then yeah, I'll reward him at that point.
Jeremy, that would set up such an interesting situation here when you have the team saying we're going to, and they say, okay, show us again. Would that go over well in the Pickens camp?
No, it wouldn't, because he's the type, he's cool with sitting back and causing a little bit of ruckus here. I don't think he's going to sign that tag. So Dallas has to decide, do you follow the model of like the Cincinnati Bengals with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, with Philadelphia, with two-star receivers, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith? That strains your cap a lot. You're talking about 25, maybe even 30% of your salary cap. So Dallas is going to want to do a deal, but they're going to want to do it to their constraints. And yet again, we're going to have another song and dance like they had with Micah Parsons just last year.
Tim Hasselbeck, are the Cowboys in danger of having a similar situation to Micah last year?
I think they are, and you know, this one I would kind of defend Dallas a little bit because Jeremy referenced like all the money, you know, allocated to the cap at, you know, basically for two wide receivers. Look, and that's assuming that George Pickens would want to sign a Smith or T. Higgins like deal. And quite frankly, if I were representing him, I wouldn't let him sign a deal like that. You know, so I think the most likely scenario is they tag him, he's forced to play on it, or you know, throw a fit and demand a trade. You know, I would think he would play on it, and if he does like Damian says, which is, hey, prove it again, and he has, you know, over 90 catches, around 1,500 yards, close to double-digit touchdowns or better, quite frankly, at that point, he probably is going to be pushing like the high 30s a year, maybe approaching 40 a year for a wide receiver, because I think if he does that again, people will view him as one of the very best receivers in the game, and I think some people already view him that way.
Yeah, look, it's not just a George Pickens situation. It becomes a Cowboys conversation and how they handle these contracts. As we've discussed in years past, CeeDee Lamb's contract situation dragged on. Ezekiel Elliott's did. Dak Prescott's did. We will see what happens with George Pickens. Jeremy, a Chiefs reunion. Is that on the table for Tyreek Hill, who was released earlier this week by the Miami Dolphins?
Peter, on the table, yes, but maybe not right now. He's got a significant knee injury that he has to sort through. Typically, those players don't sign in free agency for a long time. But the Chiefs, there's a sense there that we've seen some tweets from ex-players or some current players like Chris Jones that they would want him back and maybe get the band back together, maybe re-sign Travis Kelce. They brought back Eric Bieniemy, their former OC. So they believe with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in place, they're never going to reset. They're always going to have a chance. And Hill does bring a little bit of what they need, which is playmaking on the outside.
I would just say this, and you can definitely back me up on this. 32 years old when the season starts. He's coming off major injuries. And I don't know if this is one of those where teams are rushing in March to sign Tyreek Hill. What's your impression on Hill to the Chiefs and whether that would actually get them over the top again?
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a kind of guy has a vibe of let's get the band back together and create some old mojo. But again, like you pointed out, Tyreek Hill is 32 years old, coming off a major injury. Teams are not going to be lined up in March, April to sign Tyreek Hill, in my opinion. I think this is a guy that they'll wait until the summertime to see, okay, let's see how you're progressing as far as your rehab is concerned, then maybe we'll sign you. When I look at the Chiefs, this is not even about wide receivers. Their more immediate need is running back. They need running back help. The Chiefs were the worst team as far as creating explosive plays from the running back position. They need a playmaker at that position before we get into this conversation about Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, hey, Tim Hasselbeck, going to bring you in here because yesterday DraftKings released a very early, very premature over-under win total list. And this is fascinating. If you look at the AFC West, You can take it a million different directions. The Chiefs and the Chargers being above the Broncos, who were the 1 seed and hosted the AFC Championship game. But you look at this, what's your immediate reaction as far as very early projections as far as win totals go in the AFC West?
Yeah. It seems aggressive. I get it. Mahomes is the quarterback, but he may miss some of the beginning part of the season. I don't know that they hit that number. And that division, I just think everyone around Kansas City is improving as well, which goes to Damian's point of, look, it's not just wide receiver, that it's an issue in Kansas City.
Okay, I agree. Do you guys have any thoughts on this? I mean, it's interesting that the Denver Broncos are third after what they did last year.
Oh, there's no question. You just looking at the division. I think when the Los Angeles Chargers get both of their tackles back, they're going to be massively improved. So we got to wait and see on this whole Kansas City. She's going to be back.
The Raiders will go on and move Maxx Crosby. He interviewed Bears quarterback Caleb Williams on his own podcast, and that interview is sparking fresh speculation about his future. Take a listen.
Just to be open and honest, bro. Like we talked about it earlier, but respect at a different level, bro. You're one of those guys for sure, and you're just getting started.
Yep.
I don't even know you understand yet how good you can be.
Yeah.
And that's the scariest part.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just keep that mindset. Keep doing what you're doing. We're locked in.
Absolutely.
Forever.
All right. First of all, it's Maxx Crosby's podcast. He has a different team's quarterback on. He's gushing about Caleb Williams. Do you think these comments are something or nothing, Jeremy?
A little bit of something. He's putting some flirtations out there, but I do not expect Maxx Crosby to request a trade at this point. He is tied with owner Mark Davis. I think he's going to sit back and see what the Raiders do here. Now, this one's complicated because I have talked to a team source who believes the chances of Crosby returning are somewhat small just because of the needs this team has. They have a ton of needs.
Returning small.
Somewhat small, yes, because they have a ton of needs, and at the end of the day, if they get the right offer, they could entertain this. But he's not going to push the envelope, and they are at least open to him returning. So next week in Indianapolis, he is going to be the story, and teams are going to figure out what they're willing to give for him.
Can we talk about how crazy it is nowadays with all these every athlete got a podcast. They on here talking about. They sound like Suge Knight out here. You know what I mean? Like, come on my crew, come on my team, and all.
Come to Death Row.
I grew up in the era where everybody hated each other.
Yeah.
But now all these guys are buddy friends talking about each other's quarterbacks and stuff. It's just crazy. But speaking of Maxx Crosby, I will say this: I think the Raiders absolutely should trade him.
Really?
Because their timelines don't match up with where the Raiders are.
But guys like that don't come around so often.
I understand, but you know what? He's 28 right now. You're in the same division with the Kansas City Chiefs, Denver Broncos, and the Los Angeles Chargers. By the time you start turning this thing around, Maxx Crosby, his use is over with by that time. So why not get a bounty? Because it's more important to get pieces around your presumed number 1 pick in Fernando Mendoza. And let Maxx Crosby, let's not make this a Myles Garrett type thing.
Okay.
Let's not do that. I don't want to see that for Maxx Crosby.
Tim?
First off, Damian's like the nicest guy on the planet. I'm always talking about like being mad, not liking people. I've known him since he was a teenager. He hasn't been mean to anybody ever in his life. Okay, I mean, he's competitive, but he's never been mean to anybody. I just think a little bit where there's smoke, there's fire from a standpoint of, look, they shut him down in Las Vegas last year, and I know that there's been some change in leadership, but they shut him down, and I think that really points to what Damian's talking about in terms of the timeline. They were like, look, you're owed a lot of money. You're a 28-year-old. You probably get a lot of value for you on the trade market as we try to rebuild this thing. And so, I think that from the standpoint of looking around at, hey, could I play with a quarterback that looks like he's on the up, on a team that looks like they can win the division, they could make some noise, potentially be a Super Bowl caliber team. Yeah, I think he was probably looking at Caleb Williams and others as an opportunity to not end up, again, as Damian pointed out, in a Myles Garrett conversation where you're viewed as one of the best players in the league on the defensive side of the ball, but your team is irrelevant.
I will say this. I covered multiple Raiders games this season, spoke to that coaching staff that's no longer there. First guy in the building, last guy to leave. The work ethic is off the charts. Jeremy Fowler, what do we need to know about George Pickens and the Dallas Cowboys?
We need to know, Peter, this could get messy because he is expected to be franchise tagged. I don't think he's going to take that lightly. He'll probably stay away from the team, won't sign the tag. He wants a long-term deal. He believes that he has proved that. Now, Dallas would prefer to keep him than to trade him. They want to work this out. They're all in on Brian Schottenheimer, Dak Prescott, and George Pickens all together. But they're going to have to pay up. That number probably needs to have a 3 in front of it on the per-year average.
Jeremy, what about Maxx Crosby and the Las Vegas Raiders?
That it would require a massive haul for the Raiders to truly entertain this. But here's the issue. The teams I've talked to around the league believe that the Raiders can get a lot for Maxx Crosby, but can they get a Micah Parsons type deal? That's 2 first-round picks and a player. He's 2 years older. It's kind of a question whether they can get that. So the Raiders are trying to sort out what the value is. They are comfortable keeping Maxx Crosby, who is very close with owner Mark Davis.
Very interesting. One of the names that keeps coming up this offseason is Kyler Murray. Mike LaFleur says they're non-committal yet. We're going to see. We're going to play it all out. What could Kyler Murray actually get in a trade market if he was to put on the block?
Yeah, Peter, he could get a hug, maybe a handshake, a Starbucks gift card. I'm not diminishing the player. It's about the contract and the money. He's got nearly $40 million in guaranteed money. Teams are just not going to want to take that on. They're going to wait for Arizona to release him unless they can work something out next week at the scouting combine in Indianapolis. But right now, the expectation is Murray could be available via release as a true free agent.
Okay, let's start with Kyler Murray. Sorry, I'm getting choked up here. I'm having an attack out here when we talk about Kyler. Let's stay with Kyler, though. Jamie and Woody, Kyler Murray, your take on him as far as a quarterback in the NFL right now?
Ultra talented guy. The talent cannot be denied. He was the number 1 overall player for a reason. Like, we all know that he's talented. My question as it relates to Kyler Murray is this dude all the way in? Like, we've heard noise about, this dude hasn't been the best teammate. Does he, his lack of studying, all those type of games, the video games, all those type of things. You're talking about CEO of a franchise, the quarterback. So if I'm going to invest assets, money, I need to make sure that my guy's going to be all the way in, and I don't know if I'm getting that with Kyler Murray.
Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a kind of a prove-it situation for Kyler Murray, which is why he's most likely to get released rather than traded. And when he gets released, and he clears waivers, he'll end up being a free agent, much like Malik Willis. And I think that, to Damian's point, from a talent perspective, there'll be people that think Kyler Murray's more physically talented, but from a everything else perspective, when you think of age and other intangibles, I think Malik Willis would be the preferred free agent that's on the market at the time. So I think the most likely scenario, is that Kyler Murray, does find himself in a situation where he probably, can be a guy that has a chance to be a starter somewhere. But I don't know that there's going to be more than one, if there is one, where it's like, yep, this guy will be our starter for the upcoming season. I think that's just where we are with Kyler Murray.
I got emotional because I'm thinking about that Kyler Murray, the player, number 1 prospect, okay, Heisman guy, and then took this team to the playoffs. It's not like he hasn't done anything in his career, and we're talking about him in a certain way. Malik Willis, unproven, but showed really some signs against Baltimore in that Saturday night game. When you're looking just, if they were both pure free agents, would you rather have Malik Willis or Kyler Murray, who's got a far more decorated resume?
Just pure free agent, I would probably go Malik Willis. I really would, and I know that's taking a leap of faith, but I'll take a leap of faith on the intangibles. The guy that I see has basically grinded. Remember, this is a guy that was drafted by the Tennessee Titans. They didn't want him. He gets traded to Green Bay, and look what the work the Green Bay Packers have done with Malik Willis. And so I think teams will evaluate not just the player, but the intangibles that come with the player. And so for me, I'll take Malik Willis over Kyler Murray.
Interesting. The NFL offseason is just getting started. Combine is next week. Time for a segment we call the Schrager Five. You get that old music. You think of TJ and Berman. We get to a list. I'm going through my list of the top 5 most intriguing coordinator hires this offseason. Number 5. Starting things off with Brian Fleury as the new Seahawks offensive coordinator. Clint Kubiak takes the job in Vegas, takes with him Andrew Janocko, the quarterback coach. Brian Fleury, the tight ends coach from the San Francisco 49ers, stays in the division and goes up to Seattle. Very interesting hire if he can keep it going. Number 4, the Lions offensive coordinator job. It went to this guy, Drew Petzing, who was with the Cardinals last year. That's who the Lions chose to be the man in charge of Jared Goff and Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown. A very curious hire. Drew Petzing will take over in Detroit. Number 3, Giants. They hire John Harbaugh to great fanfare. We think Todd Monken is coming with him. When Monken gets the job in Cleveland, it opens the door for Matt Nagy, who has never worked with John Harbaugh before, but Nagy, who has got some Super Bowl experience, leaving Kansas City to join the Giants, and Jackson Dart in New York. Number 2, this one I thought was maybe the wildest of all. Sean Mannion, quarterback coach for the Green Bay Packers, 32 years old, has never called a play in his life at any level, will be the new Eagles offensive coordinator, and he takes over for a team that will not have Jeff Stoutland, the legendary offensive line coach, on staff anymore. And number 1, we go to Baltimore, where Declan Doyle, who right now is 29 years old, is taking over as the new Ravens offensive coordinator. Lamar Jackson, of course, has MVPs and all pros, but he doesn't have that postseason success. Can Declan Doyle, 29 years old, who was with Denver and then Chicago, be the guy to get him over the hump? All eyes on Baltimore. Declan Doyle's number 1. He had his welcoming press conference yesterday, and they asked him what the expectations were for off-season workouts. Take a listen.
We would expect them to be here, and certainly it is voluntary. And so, but it's also, you know, if you want to say that you're going to win a championship, you want to say that you have championship standards and those are your goals and your expectations, certainly that's going to take work, that's going to take collaboration, that's going to take the beginning of building the relationship with their coaches, other players, you know, starting off this next regime on the right foot.
So in so many words, there it is. You're hearing about him. And 29 years old, new brass in town. Lamar has not been in voluntary workouts in recent years. Damian Woody, your response to Declan Doyle saying, yeah, we'd expect you to partake in voluntary workouts.
Well, here's what I would say. Like, Lamar Jackson clearly won the power struggle this offseason with John Harbaugh getting fired and moved on. This is Lamar Jackson's team. This is your legacy. This is your show now. No, there's no other fingers that's going to be pointed at anywhere else but Lamar Jackson. So now you go out, you bring in Jesse Mentor. You bring out the 29-year-old new offensive coordinator, who, by the way, I don't think has called plays before in the NFL. And so you're installing this whole thing. You're the CEO of this whole deal. If you don't show up to the offseason program, to OTAs and all those type of things, what is the message that you're sending to everyone right now? Because I'm sorry, people talk, people laugh at the OTAs and the offseason program. It matters. If you want to build towards a championship, championships are built in the offseason. Offseason program, OTAs, the times that you spend with your teammates. That's how you build championships. And that's the one thing we constantly hammer Lamar on. You've gotten the 2 MVPs, but you haven't been to a Super Bowl. You haven't won a championship. It starts now.
Tim Hasselbeck, we bring you in here. I ask your thoughts on the situation are we being too old school on this where, hey, it's OTAs, new coach, new offensive coordinator, be there, Lamar?
Right. You know what's funny is I've thought about that a little bit, Peter, like in terms of like the old school mentality. The era that Damian and I, played in, and I think the expectations for guys, I think was slightly different back then. That being said, I think even back then there was always a feeling of, guys that have been in the league for over a decade, guys that had accomplished a ton in terms of postseason success, guys that had developed a reputation as being, team-oriented first. I think there was always an environment where guys would accept those guys not being around in the offseason. Look, Damian played with Brady. If Brady at some point wanted, some time in the offseason, I think there was an expectation that would be okay. I remember my time in New York, Strahan didn't want to come in until after training camp, but he was in year 12 or 15. Like, those things were acceptable. But I think in that environment and in today's environment, until you've played for a decade, until you've achieved the postseason success, if you don't show up in the offseason for some of these environments, especially when there's a new coaching staff, then I think the perception is you're about yourself and you're not about the team. So, look, that's not old school, new school. That's just, I think, the reality of the environment. And that's why Steve Bisciotti talked about, look, if you want to be a part of the hiring process, then get your butt to Baltimore. And I think what Declan Doyle is saying at 29 years old, you want to be a champion, like you want to do that, then get your butt to Baltimore even in April.
Jeremy, what's your read on this Ravens situation?
Yeah.
Obviously, things ran its course with Harbaugh and Monken. They're moving on, but two young guys, and yet we're wondering if Lamar's going to even be there.
Yeah, because let's be real about it. Forget OTAs. They had a hard enough time getting Lamar Jackson to practice on a Wednesday of game week, which is just a little weird for a franchise elite quarterback. Some of that was a durability concern, him trying to get himself to Sundays, but availability's been an issue. He's had 3 of his last 5 years. He's missed at least 4 games. So big picture, this is kind of a reset for everybody, and they are trying to set a tone here very clearly because this is a team that's trying to get a contract done with Lamar Jackson. Steve Bisciotti, the owner, has said he wants a deal done before free agency, the start of the new league year. That's in a couple weeks. Lamar Jackson is his own agent. So there's going to be some clarity here in the next few weeks as to what his future looks like with the team and how that impacts things like his availability and his OTAs.
Oh, there's so much to talk about.